Happy Sunday. Welcome in to Seahawks Today by Chat Sports. Tyler Jones here with you. So glad to have you with us. Coming up on today's show, we are going to talk about potential trade candidates for your Seattle Seahawks. Who could they potentially move on from this offseason? We'll break it all down and more. Go through 5 names in just a few moments from right now. Before we do, folks, we are closing in on 35,000 subscribers here on the channel. And here's what we're going to do. When we get to 35,000 subs, we're going to pop some bottles and we're going to celebrate and have a good time. But we got to get there first. I believe that we can get there by the end of the week. But I need you, if you're not already subscribed, to go ahead and subscribe and have your fellow Seahawk fans and friends and family members, whatever they may be, subscribe to the channel. Let's celebrate. Let's have a good time. We're covering this team like no one else is. We're counting down to the draft, free agency, trades, and more. We got live shows every week as well. This is the place to be for the 12s. If you're not already subscribed, what are you waiting for? Subscribe now for free. Doesn't cost you a thing. YouTube.com/Seahawks TV. Turn on notifications so you never miss a moment. The obvious name we begin with today is Jamal Adams for Seattle. And Jamal Adams we did not see a whole lot of in 2022, and he's missed a lot of time since he's been a member of the Seahawks in that blockbuster trade with the Jets a few years ago. And when we saw this past year at that safety position, Ryan Neal was so good filling in for Jamal Adams. He was the top-rated safety in the entire league, according to Pro Football Focus. And so there could be the possibility of trading away Jamal Adams now to at least try to get something, anything out of him at this point. Obviously, Jamal Adams is still a very good football player, a 3-time Pro Bowler. The career statistics are really solid. They speak for themselves. There's been the possibility of maybe even switching him to linebacker, but even with all that said, you might be of the mindset of the Seahawks of, hey, let's get rid of him, see if we can get something for him now while we can, essentially, because if you feel that confident in Ryan Neal potentially to fill that void at that safety position. You might say, look, we've done this Jamal Adams thing, and it didn't necessarily work. We didn't get what we bought. Let's at least try to salvage this while we can. That might be the mindset of the Seattle Seahawks at this point in time to potentially move on from Jamal Adams. Yes, he is a very talented player. No one's disputing that, but you just haven't been able to count on him, rely on him throughout this point in his career. So that could be why the Seahawks potentially move on from Jamal Adams at this point. So with that said, will Jamal Adams return to Seattle next year? I still lean towards that he will, based on the way his contract is structured and the dead cap hit that still would be required in a trade. I still think he comes back next year personally. But what say you? Will the Seahawks move on from Jamal Adams? Let me know in the comment section. This is our pinned comment today. You might get an ad break. If so, take advantage of it. Type Y for yes, type in for no. While the ad's playing, get your votes in. Tell me what you think if the Seahawks will keep Jamal Adams or not. Y for yes, in for no. Next up is offensive guard Gabe Jackson. Gabe Jackson has been injury-riddled himself. Remember, he joined the Seahawks back in 2021 in a trade that was involving a 5th-round pick is what the Seahawks gave up. A former 3rd-round selection and an aging offensive guard, a guy that, kind of like what we talked about with Jamal Adams, there was questions about how reliable he could be, as he didn't play more than 27% of snaps in a single game in 2022. Gabe Jackson just simply wasn't around. And the consensus, if you talk around the Seahawks community, is that Gabe Jackson will not be back next year. And so the hope is that you would at least try to trade and get something out of him. And then if not, ultimately, you'll just have to cut him. It seems highly unlikely that Gabe Jackson is back next year with the Seahawks one way or the other. You hope you could trade him and get something, but at the end of the day, if you have to cut him, then that will be the case. I would expect that his replacement for this position will probably be a rookie, somebody that the Seahawks select within the first 3 rounds or so, and then you'll move forward, get younger at that position from there. Got a few more names to get to here in a moment. Before we do, Seahawks Today is sponsored by Athletic Greens. I take AG1 by Athletic Greens literally every day. Get comprehensive and convenient daily nutrition at athleticgreens.com/chatsports. I gave AG1 a try because I wanted better gut health and wanted a supplement that actually tastes great. I take AG1 every morning, and it makes me feel ready to take on my day. I came into this year wanting to get healthier, and starting my year on AG1 has helped me do just that. I take it every morning, and I feel the best I've ever felt. Covering my nutritional bases for the day literally couldn't be easier, which is why I trust Athletic Greens. I just mix 1 small scoop of AG1 with water and drink it first thing each morning. Done. I also like that it costs less than $3 a day. Pretty good if you ask me. It's a really effective daily habit with the highest quality source ingredients. Win-win. If a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then Athletic Greens is giving you a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Go to athleticgreens.com/chatsports. That's athleticgreens.com/chatsports. Check it out in the comments and the description of today's video. The link is there. Athletic Greens, I love it. I've been a big fan of it. Tell them that Tyler Jones and Chat Sports sent you. You'll be glad you did. That's athleticgreens.com/chatsports. Next up on our list, this might be the most controversial one, is Tyler Lockett. And I know what you're thinking. Tyler Lockett has been fantastic the last few seasons, and no one is disputing that at all with Tyler Lockett. You're looking at a guy who's had 4 straight seasons of over 1,000+ receiving yards. But think about this for a second when it comes to Tyler Lockett, okay? He's in his 30s now. He is an older receiver at this point in time. His stock, his value is not going to get any higher than it is right now as far as compensation that you could get out of him. And remember, we heard the reports last season that the Seahawks were open to trading Tyler Lockett last year, but ultimately a deal didn't get done. This year, we saw some injuries that we hadn't seen before from Tyler Lockett. Remember, he has been consistently reliable, but this year missed a little bit of time with the leg and hand injuries that he had this past year. I get it. He's a very talented player, and I would love to have Tyler Lockett on my team. Nobody's disputing that at all. But with the Seahawks in the position they are of trying to get younger, building this youth movement, now might be the time to potentially move on from Tyler Lockett. And when it comes to his salary situation, it makes a lot more sense to potentially trade him now this offseason, comparably speaking to the situation a season ago. So I like Tyler Lockett. I hope he's back in Seattle. Hopefully they can maybe restructure his deal of some sorts. But when you look at his trade value and where he's at right now, if you're going to move on from him at some point, if he's not going to retire as a member of the Seattle Seahawks, now would make the most sense as far as when to potentially trade Tyler Lockett as far as that goes. So, with that said, what say you? Should the Seahawks trade Tyler Lockett? If you think they should, type T for trade. If not, type P for pass. Let me know what you're thinking. T for trade, P for pass, if the Seahawks should move on from Tyler Lockett or not. Couple more names for you. Let's go to the cornerback position. That is where we find Mike Jackson. Mike Jackson had a solid season. Remember, this is a guy that was on the fringe of making the roster or not in 2022 training camp. Ultimately, not only did he make the roster, but he earned a starting position, starting all 17 games for the Seahawks at the outside cornerback position alongside Tariq Woolen. Joined the Seahawks in 2021. His career stats include 78 tackles, 2 fumble recoveries, 1 interception, and 14 passes defended. The nerds at Pro Football Focus were not big fans of Mike Jackson. His numbers on that end, the analytics, didn't really like Mike Jackson a whole lot, in all honesty. Now, I'll say this about Mike Jackson. I like Mike Jackson. He's a good player, but he is not in the plans for the Seahawks' future. We've heard the rumblings about them drafting a corner within the first couple of rounds of this upcoming draft. You already have Kobe Bryant, who is expected to eventually move up from that nickelback position to be a starting outside corner unless they draft somebody that's better than that. Mike Jackson is a hold piece. He is there to keep the seat warm, if you want to put it that way. Mike Jackson did his job well of keeping the seat warm this past season. But if you can get something out of him, I think that the Seahawks are looking at their future for better options at that position. That is a position that I think for the future of Seattle, they would like to upgrade for the long term. Mike Jackson is not a part of those long-term solutions. Last one on the list is none other than Jake Curhan, the offensive tackle for the Seattle Seahawks, who Jake has had I think, a really good story, all things considered. To go from an undrafted free agent to playing in the National Football League and being around the last few years, it's been a great story for him. But the reality is the Seahawks didn't need him as much this year as they've needed him prior. He started 5 games in 19 career games, but this season he was only active. He was inactive in 11 of 17 games this year. His name just wasn't called upon. And as far as the backup offensive tackle spot goes, in that right tackle position behind Abraham Lucas, that's another position that I expect the Seahawks, with all those picks to probably draft another tackle to back up Abe Lucas and Charles Cross in those positions, where Jake's replacement is essentially on the way there. Nothing against Jake at all, but there are better options potentially. I think the Seahawks are going to look for something better to be that backup, that rotational piece for those offensive tackle positions. So with that, those are the 5 players. We'll show you them again here in just a second. But before we do, name a player you think the Seahawks should trade away. Let us know in the comment section whether it's one of the 5 we talked about or somebody else. Tell me in the comment section below. To recap, the Seahawks trade candidates: Jamal Adams, Gabe Jackson, Tyler Lockett, Mike Jackson, as well as Jakey on there. And I'll say this before we go. We are not saying that all 5 of these guys are going to get traded. But we're saying there's the possibility that all 5 of these players are on the table for different reasons that we laid out on today's show. We'll see if the Seahawks move them or not. You can interact with me on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Tyler Jones Live, talking about your Seattle Seahawks there, and I'll see you next time right here on Seahawks Today.